through the process legitimately suffer from the crimes of those who didn't go through that process. And I think the Ministry of Education must sit up. Imagine the last Minister for Education said he knew nothing about education. He was making that revelation when he was leaving office.
Right.
So how are we sure that whoever is there today is competent enough to handle the challenges that come with that?
Some persons will argue and say he's a professor, so he definitely has the background.
It's not about being a professor. Anybody can be a professor. But do you have the requisite knowledge of administration to run this system?
Critical policy factors.
Do you get? So there's so much that needed to be considered before making somebody head an institution. So for me, I feel the security agencies are supposed to be involved in this. Let's actually go deep down. Let's ask more questions. Let's investigate this matter and be sure where we are on these issues before we take a decision of either banning or stopping all of that. There's much more that needs to be done. What we are doing right now is that we are reacting to a challenge and we are not actually looking at it critically before taking some decisions.
There's the argument now, I mean, saying that we should be looking at home-based universities and polytechnics, whether public or private, that are also doing even far worse than some of these schools outside of Nigeria. One case that readily comes to mind is the one that happened not very long ago. I mean, just a few months ago, Lagos State University, where even the university itself did not deny that it did happen, but they just said, well, we are investigating, and in due course, we will make the result, I mean, the report of the investigation public. Should we not also bring this search lamp, as it were, to home-based institutions?
You know, we are tired of investigations.
Too many panels.
Too many panels without actions. We have so many reports on a whole lot of things, and nothing is being done. Nobody is brought to book. Nobody is being questioned. Whatever anybody decides to sit down to do is what we have at the end of the day. In fact, to a large extent, we may not even hear anything about those reports anymore, because a whole lot is going on in this system, and we've got to take a critical look at it. As of today, not so many children can afford to go to our private institutions. Nobody is talking about it. As of today, the private institutions are doing well and better than our public schools. Is there not something going on under? What is actually given right to more institutions doing well than our public institutions? Who should have more money to run an institution? Shouldn't it be government? Now, as of today, our institutions are crumbling, and then some private institutions are waking up by the day, and somebody is not asking questions. Nobody is doing anything about it. I think there's much more that needs to be done. There's much more corruption running in our own institutions, and that is why you can see the ripple effect in some of these countries. They are cashing out on it, because it is a function of what we have not put in place that's actually giving birth to all of these things we're having. And like I said, there is much more that we should expect coming in beyond just the certificate issues. A lot of people who might sit on that panel might be victims of these certificate issues. So what makes you think that they will allow whatever reports or whatever panel you're putting up go through?
So the syndicate is stronger than we readily realize?
Obviously. There's so much. In fact, how many people can afford the monies that are required to get these things done? How many children from the poor homes can actually go through that process? In fact, even the hearts to go through it, they may not be able to have it. But there are people who understand that they have some backings and they can pull this through with money. You and I will be here. I hope it doesn't happen. But you will discover that there will be nothing said about this beyond these reactions we have. And 2, 3 days, 4 weeks down the line, you will discover that all this are swept under the carpet and everything is back to normal. So, but we hope they sit up and then they get this working.
One of the things that would even, that amazes a lot of people, including myself, is the fact that this gentleman from Delhi, Nigeria, who did this reporting, Audu, never even had to travel out of Nigeria to get this done. So, experts are now saying that points to the sort of off-radar approach that this syndicate has, all right, in such a way that it will even be difficult for Nigerian authorities to pinpoint them and bring them to book.
You are even talking of what is happening outside the country. There are institutions in this country that we are aware of, that people do not even go to school and they get certificates at the end of the day.
They literally purchase certificates.
They purchase the certificate. Some will never show up. Don't we have NYSC students who do not show up at their PPA and at the end of the day they pass out? Don't we have people who do not even go to camp and they pass out? So we've already perfected the system. It's a Nigerian thing. And until we address it from home, we will keep having these things. That is why they could readily point fingers and say, if you check it, it is a Nigerian that is at the helm of affairs. He's the one that is perfecting this.
So we exported the Nigerianness.
Obviously, we exported this corruption to other countries. Some of them may not even have known what to do. But with our influence, they understood the system and they are perfecting it now. And we are the beneficiaries of this thing. So for me, there's much more than just coming up to make a declaration that you won't accept certificates. How do you even bring them to book, just like you said, when we can't even trace them? Even if you decide to track a phone, these guys are not in the country, so how do you even get them? And those countries will want to preserve their own. So there's much more beyond just coming up to say we don't accept certificate. If you don't accept their certificate, what of those who do it in the country? So what do we do? Do we also shut down their certificate? So there's much more that needs to be done in that system beyond just making reactionary statements. I think much more needs to be done.
There are people who have gone to these schools, including this particular one in this instant case, several years before now, and they have certificates from these schools, and they are working in Nigeria or in other parts of the world, whether it's in private sector or in the public sector. Should this investigation, I mean, in the event that it sees the light of day, also be expanded to net in these persons?
We have said severally that this panel, you will still have people who are beneficiaries of this system.
Who will sabotage?
Who will be on this panel. And they will definitely sabotage that report. So for us, I think we should sit back and fix our home first. It's not about investigations. We're tired of investigations. Let's fix our home front. Let's fix our educational system. Because even if you want to get those people, some of them might be getting to retirement. Some of them might have benefited from the system. Are we not worried that people can get past our systems and get into offices with forged certificates and nobody could trace them? If not for this reporter now who did this investigation, are we not worried that people can do anything and go scot-free? Are we not worried that nobody is questioning anybody? In a system where we say we don't even employ people, yet people get jobs on a daily basis. So it then tells you that certificate is not even the problem. Some of these people have some backings that would also help them make this investigation actually not see the light of day. So there's much more we need to fix as a nation in-house rather than making some of this noise we're making here.
And so this morning news coming through says that the reporter has been taken in for probe by the Independent Corrupt and Other Practices Commission, ICPC. Is it possible that in the course of this reporting, because it took a couple of months for him to wrap it up, he possibly committed infractions, maybe ethical infractions, or is government as usual just grandstanding?
Obviously they are. I was listening to something this morning while coming here. A whistleblower said something. And rather than going after what she had reported, they created the crisis around her and made it look like she was the one who had embezzled money. So you now see why a whole lot of Nigerians will not want to say certain things about the corruption that they even witness. What's the crime of the reporter? Let's even agree that he might have committed some infractions. Is what the infractions he's committed, is it much more than the report of the investigation he has made? And the weight of it. Is it much more than the weight of it? Are you telling me that these things do not exist? Anybody would have done anything to get a report. What he had produced is not a sin. He opened our eyes to something because of our being very comfortable with our offices. Obviously, it's not supposed to be a journalist that should be discovering that. What's the job of the DSS? What's the job of all of our security agencies? They should have been the ones investigating these things and then bringing it to light. Yet a journalist decided to go out of his way just for the love of this country to do this, and then you are taking him in rather than looking for perpetrators of this crime. So I feel whatever the reporter has done, he should be seen from the light of trying to paint Nigeria in a good light. And then it's okay to bring him in, maybe wanting to get more information
about his report and his discovery.
If that's the case, that's fine. But anything beyond that, I think we're having a misplaced priority. We should sit down. There's a crime, and we should address the crime and not the process of getting to do an investigation that actually revealed it.
This report is now being seen more like, metaphorically, a double-edged sword.
Sure.
Because on the one edge, it has cut through the evaluation and standards mechanism or the Federal Ministry of Education. The other edge has apparently cut through loopholes and weaknesses, or weaklings, if you like, within the NYSC as a scheme. What should be the reaction of the NYSC about this? Because the NYSC had bragged severally, again and again, that their system cannot be compromised by anybody or any entity. But this young man, I don't know how skillful he is with, he looks like a regular internet user, because he said he had served legitimately in 2018. So it's virtually, if you like, 5-year gap in between. And now he goes back to serve. And this is a system that's not supposed to allow you to serve twice. The NYSC has come out to officially say they have a system that will not allow you. Yeah, exactly. So what has happened now with NYSC?
I'm sure you are aware that some of these systems are manned by humans. And so he would have gotten through with it. These humans also have interest. So before we come out to actually make certain statements, we should understand that there are people who work on these systems, and for whatever reason, when we talk about corruption, there's actually corruption in the system. So until we address the root cause of corruption, these things are human. It's done by humans. So anything would have happened. So for me, there is no system in this country as at today that would actually come out to say it is watertight and it cannot be hacked, it cannot be changed, or something can be done. It's possible that there is somebody in there that is actually sabotaging the efforts of the institution, as it were. That is why you would also see NYSC will make postings, and in 2 days, certain people are redeployed because they don't like where they are going to. So who would have done that? It's all boils down to
the system.
People within the system. So much more. We need to sanitize our people. We've got to address the issue of corruption to its roots. It's beyond just being at the head. There are people who are coming behind that needs to actually understand that whatever actions they take today would actually affect the system tomorrow. So a whole lot has to be done in such systems. There is actually, as of today, no system in this country that anybody cannot pull through. There is none. So let's leave all these issues of it cannot. Obviously, we have a case at hand that it has happened. And how many other people are we not in this same country where somebody is serving as a minister who is also serving in the NYSC and nobody questions it? Somebody came up to even make a defense that it is right. So today you can even be serving in the NYSC and actually get a federal appointment.
It's interesting. It turns out you're the second person I'm talking with about this subject between dinner time yesterday and this morning. And one common denominator between both narratives, yours and his, is that we need to fix our home problems within the education system. But those problems are daunting. For example, there's an agreement, like my colleague and I talked about when we opened the show this morning, an agreement between the federal government, they call it Memorandum of Action, and ASU, Academic Staff Union of Universities. From 2009, a child born then will be, by this year, who knows, 15 years, I guess. Most of the elements, the issues, the items in that agreement have not been fulfilled from the federal government side. And then you have other issues that have sprung up between then and now. And then you have all of the systemic rot in the system, in the education sector. You go to public universities, check their hostels, check their lecture theaters. In fact, some of them won't even have lecture theaters, if not for maybe alumni associations, if not for maybe institutions like the Central Bank of Nigeria, and so on and so forth. How do we begin to address these problems, beyond all of the rhetorics?
We can only start addressing these problems when we have sincerity of purpose. That's one. When we have sincere leaders who are truly interested in the growth of this country. Somebody once said, if you want to destroy a nation, start destroying its educational system.
Is that where we are?
In fact, we are at the peak of it. Because as at today, how do you explain that children are being kidnapped from school and we are doing nothing about it? How do you explain that somebody who is responsible for school feeding projects can embezzle as much as she did, and as at today she's not been able to appear at the FCC office, and nobody's talking about it. How do you explain that we have leaders who are at the helm of affairs, and from 2009 till now, basic amenities for institutions are not yet addressed? So we have leaders who pay lip service to education and are doing nothing in real terms to make sure that structures are in place. That's what is giving birth to a whole lot of private institutions. And yet, Nigerians can't afford it. So when they have access to go to some of these countries and they are guaranteed that they can graduate, why won't they explore such options? Even when they can't even afford it. So they could do all sorts of menial jobs. Nigerians face a whole lot of issues out there trying to study. The UK, as of today, has stopped dependents from coming in with students. A whole lot of things are going on and nobody's talking about it. What's giving birth to some of this market? It is our educational system not working. You see somebody who is at 200 level, had the same mate, who had graduated and is back in the same country to serve. Yet we are still here talking about certificates we will not accept and the ones we will accept. It's okay not to accept their certificate. Have we been able to produce ours? What are we doing to actually solve these issues? Today, as at today, in the 2024 budget, how much is earmarked for education? How far can it go? These are questions we should begin to ask ourselves. From this, we can be able to tell ourselves, is this administration sincere in addressing the issues of education? We should be giving it top priority. Most of the crisis around the country is targeted at making sure people are not educated. And we are at the brink of losing it. We must get back to the drawing board and begin to address this matter. Else, we may not have a nation in a few years from now.
Incidentally, the federal government has approved several universities, federal universities across this country, from the east to the north, to the west to the south. I mean, universities all over the place. There is now the debate as to, hold on a second, should we rather invest in existing universities, strengthen them in terms of quality of graduates that they churn out every academic cycle, or should we establish new universities and give more people access, give them a wider range of options? Where do you stand?
We are not interested in educating our people. We're only interested in the monies we can make.
Does government make money from education in this country?
Obviously. The monies they pay in school, where does it go to? Is it not to government coffers? So they are making more money. Else, how do you explain that you are creating more universities or establishing more universities, and yet the existing ones are crying foul? They are not satisfied. I should have thought that we should give attention to the existing ones. Let them even get to the point where they don't have capacity to accommodate more students. And then you give birth to more institutions. There are states that have as much as 4, 5, 6 universities in those states. Yet they are not properly run, they are not properly managed. You have several issues coming out from these universities. Yet, in fact, supervision is actually a problem, because you hear certain things happening in this institution and nobody is asking questions. They are answerable to nobody. So I think rather than create more institutions, rather than establish more universities and give approvals, we should give attention to the ones that are existing. In fact, deal with the agreement to the letter that you've signed with us. Let it be that you fulfilled your own part. And it's okay to then establish more universities. Or possibly, let government hands off universities, the tertiary institutions completely.
So what do we do going forward?
Hand them over to private institutions. Run them like a private, public-private partnership scheme. That may give more legitimacy to our institution. That may actually help them put some structures in place to run this. There will be proper supervision. People will be answerable, and then they know what is actually happening. There's an institution I will not be willing to call name. A few days ago, I was told that in one admission year, they admitted about 20,000 students.
Do they have the capacity?
They don't have the capacity to run it. So you now ask yourself, why are they doing so, giving out such admission? All because of the money. So there's a challenge from government, and there's also a challenge from the part of those who are actually manning these institutions. And you do not blame them, because if government had control, then these things won't be happening.
It's interesting at the same time. It's sad, but let's look at whether or not it's fair. I mean, how that every time we talk about education, especially at the tertiary level, we just put the blame entirely in front of the federal government. What are the states also doing? Because every state has a university. I know of states that have, like you said, multiple universities. Let's not even go into polytechnics and colleges of education and all of that. What should be the role of states? I mean, subnationals.
It boils down to leadership, my brother. If the federal government has shown leadership, the state would have followed suit. But we actually have a big brother who behaves like he doesn't care. So the younger ones also behave like they don't care. So they give attention to politicking rather than leadership. So the government is not showing leadership. If they had shown leadership, I think the others would have taken cue from it. So the state's government actually have a role to play. Most of them, if you get to their institution, you will weep for students there. Don't we have institutions as at today that, in fact, 90% of the students stay outside campus, rather than having a system where you can accommodate students you can manage. So we see a whole lot of things. These are the things giving rise to cultism. Because these students, you don't even have control.
You can't engage them.
You can't engage them. You don't know who is a student and who is not. You don't know those who belong to the community and those who belong to the student community. So everybody just live their life. They are rather imbibing the culture of the community rather than actually imbibing a culture that actually took them to school. So there's a whole lot of challenges. We've got to sit down. We need to start managing these things, addressing these issues before getting involved with external issues.
When you heard about the student loan scheme of the federal government, so what was your assessment?
Laughable. It's a scheme that will not pull through. It's one of the several other siphon funds. That is what I will say about it.
How is that possible?
Oh, well, we had some schemes that were headed by the CBN government, the CBN governor. What happened to it? Today everybody is shouting that banks are trying to recover this money.
From the Anchor Borrowers program?
From the Anchor Borrowers program. How many people actually are accountable to it? How many people used that money for farming as it were?
But people say
models that work for Nigeria.
Homegrown models.
Homegrown models. I think it's time we begin to look at that. For now, that scheme wouldn't pull through. You and I will be here 2-3 years down the line. You will hear the story about that system. We just created a pool. As at today.
When you talk about education and all of the issues around it, amongst them will be access to it, because everybody has rights to education. Then you also want to talk about the quality of it. And you want to talk about issues around quality assurance and all of those issues around regulation and so on and so forth. Of course, Nigeria has weak links across board as far as these elements are concerned. By way of proffering solution, what specifically should we be doing as a country?
We should begin to show leadership. People should get into office legitimately and transparently. There are people who became rectors, vice chancellors, provosts, based on the amount of money they could pay, not because they were qualified to head those positions. So until we get back to the drawing board and get leaders who actually know the job, qualified for the job, and are given the job to handle, we'll keep having the same issues where we will have more weaklings than we have those who have strength to manage these institutions. So now you get a position based on how much you can afford, not because you're qualified for it. So when I get into the office, the first thing I want to do is to make money. So I do everything I can. I can destroy the system just to make my money. And when I'm done in 5 years or in 4 years, I'm out of the system. Nobody calls me to question. Because across board, we have lecturers who are not motivated. Even if we continue same system and government happens to grant all their requests on that agreement, we will still have lecturers who are not motivated. And we will have students who will be coming out without proper knowledge. We have lecturers who are just going to school because they've not got an option. Maybe if they have an option where other countries will be seeking for lecturers like they do for doctors and nurses, we would have had no teachers in this country anymore.
Of course, we have seen if you like, an exodus of lecturers leave this country.
A lot more will still go if they have more platforms that will absorb them. I can tell you that for free. I was in one of the institutions in the South recently, and I listened to lecturers talk, and I understood that the problem is not even the system, it is the students that will bear the brunt of all of these aggressions, because they are not comfortable, they are not happy.
So they bring all of that frustration to the classroom.
And they call it on the student. Do they even go to the classrooms? So they come to the classroom and tell you what to read, and then an exam is fixed for you. If you like, you pass. If you like, don't pass. And there are means to pass exam now without even getting into class. This is a typical example. So we have a system that we must go back to the drawing board and do a rejigging holistically, beyond just having a kangaroo meeting in Abuja here. There's much more that needs to be done from the grassroots.
One of the issues we have seen is how that we are not tying certificate to skills. So we are desperately looking forward to seeing graduates who have a lot of papers by way of credentials, but nobody's asking how much of competence they've got, how much of promise they hold in terms of when they get hired and all that. How do we begin to emphasize skills and de-emphasize certificates?
You know, when I was coming out this morning, something was playing in my head. I said every time anyone cries for promotion, two things are required, competence and capacity.
Right.
But we discover that people are not building competence, they are not building capacity. We are interested in paper because they believe that when you have a certificate, you have everything. But we must get back to the drawing board and understand that the era for certificate is over. How much of skills can he deploy? What does he have? What can he do? And that's been our message all the while on the platform where we operate from. We're talking to young people to get skills. Be actively involved. Don't graduate from school without having a skills that can put food on your table. There's no job in the state system except you have somebody who is very influential, who can make things happen and create a space even when there is none. You know, as of today, there are children of big men who are actually having jobs here. They've not graduated from school. It's existing everywhere. So, except you have that or you are in that category, get a skill. So when we talk about our educational systems should be addressed, what should they sustain? How do they survive? We talk about our agricultural system. Why can't NYSC be tied to an agricultural system? I was talking on a sister station one time and I said, for instance, as at today, we should have farms that are owned by NYSC students. No wonder you send a graduate to a state or a local government and the person will want to work his way back to Abuja City because our mindset,
up to Port Harcourt.
Up to Port Harcourt or Lagos, our mindset, what we have in our heads is if you're not working in these places, you don't have access to being retained where you serve. How many institutions can actually retain all of the coppers that are being turned down twice every year? So it's high time we tell ourselves the truth. These guys must begin to get involved. We should be driving more of entrepreneurial skills rather than putting too much of emphasis on certificate. Have you listened to some graduates? You'll be scared.
The ones that fall into the category of unemployable.
Okay. So we've even graded them into two groups.
Because they say we have the unemployed, those are the ones who have capacity, who have competence, but they haven't got opportunities yet in the job market. They have those who are not employable. So even if they had 1 billion opportunities, they can't take them because they don't have capacity.
They don't have capacity.
Yes.
So that tells you what the rot in our educational system. How do you tell me somebody went to school for 4 years and then you are coming out of the institution, served for 1 year, and then you fall into the category of not being employable? You did a primary school, you did a secondary school, you did an institution, you went to the university, and then you are out of school, and you can't even write a simple letter of application. Then there was something wrong. How did the person graduate? How did the person pass his exams?
You already told us how they did, because you said the system is porous.
Well, I wasn't the one who did that investigation, so we don't agree that so much needs to be done. A lecturer once told me, after marking the papers of some of his students, he discovered that if he had put in their scores as it were, nobody would pass. So they now started...
And he also had to face some questioning.
Some questioning.
Yes.
What has he been doing? Now, he teaches a class that is over 1,000 students. So sometimes he gets to the class and he will ask a particular set to get out of his class. Yet whether you ask them to leave or you ask them to stay, they will still write your exams.
Ultimately.
So what do you do? So you now begin to allot marks to them so that they can just leave and a new set comes in.
They let my people go.
Let my people go. So their mind is, well, he's not at the helm of affairs. So he sits one day and they tell him, oh, we've employed another 250 to add to what you have. And you see a lecturer addressing over 2,000 students. How would he manage it?
Meanwhile, the students have gathered their own money to buy him public address system.
In the institution I told you I went to, a lecturer gave me an instance where she had an issue with her car after an exam. Her tires were all deflated. And she called somebody, please get me somebody to fix my tires. He said a few students called the boy and said, tell madam, if she would give us a certain grade, we will change her car.
So we have to bargain.
Yes, that they will change, not the tires now, they will change, they will get her a new car. So this is what you see in schools. I've had an interface with a lecturer who told me, student walked up to him, they don't want exam, they don't want test. He should tell them how much they want, how much he wants, and they will give him. Then he passed them. So this is the rot we have in the system. And then you expect them to be employable.
Lecturers taking the bait.
Obviously. When you do not have agreements that you signed to being implemented, why won't you take it? When you don't have your salary paid as when you, why won't you take it? So some of these lecturers are also pushed to the wall. Addressing corruption is not a one-day issue.
Even within the universities?
No, it's not a one-day issue. It's something we need to sit down and tell ourselves we need to address this. We would have to take it in bits and get it done.
But now we're hearing that the federal government has given autonomy to universities. Okay. Is that not a step in the right direction in solving all of these problems that you and I have been talking about?
It's a step in the right direction. Maybe when we have square pegs in square holes.
We haven't got that yet.
We've not gotten that yet. So you can grant an autonomy to somebody who do not know what to do. So you are even giving him powers to even execute his foolishness much more. And you know power corrupts when given to the wrong person. So at this point now, until we get competent hands, autonomy is just a word.
Okay, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Ambassador Jeremiah Agala, Executive Director, Inspiring Youth Africa Initiative, for coming to share your insight with us.
I truly appreciate it.
We do appreciate that. Thank you so much. We hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much.
That's the size of our program, everyone, on Global Morning today. Thank you so very much for investing a part of your time with us. On behalf of my colleagues who co-host with me here and the entire management and staff of Global Television, we say thank you for watching. And do remember that the views of our guests are their opinions. I'm Uyag Mofwegwe. I'll see you again.